All right, it's time to talk some football now as we turn our attention to Europe's finest. Now on the SportsMax zone, we're zooming in on the UEFA Champions League. Well, matchday 6 of the league phase began early on Tuesday with plenty to digest across the competition. In one of the day's marquee matchups, top of the table Liverpool continued their hot streak, defeating Girona 1-0. Elsewhere, over in Bergamo for a huge clash between Atalanta and the struggling reigning champions Real Madrid, they picked up a much-needed 3-2 win. Our football analyst, Juan Arango, he was following the matches very closely and he joins us this afternoon to discuss the action. Juan, welcome to the SportsMax zone. How are you?
Hey, Mariah, how are you? How's everything?
I'm doing well. I mean, once there's Champions League on the channel, you know, a lot to look forward to. So, Juan, I think we should start by discussing Liverpool, that win against Girona. I expected a lot more goals, but say what? Liverpool did what they had to do and they got all 3 points.
Well, at the end of the day, that's what counted, knowing how many players were out, how many players are still not 100%, and knowing that they're just one step away from qualifying to the next round. So to me, it ends up being one of those moments where you end up looking at this team and knowing that they have a stretch of matches, which is the most important thing one has to start looking at, is the run that Liverpool are going to go from now until, I was going to say Boxing Day, but even to New Year's, the amount of matches, and it's going to be a heavy amount, knowing exactly that, knowing exactly where they are, top of the table, 5 points clear of anyone that's even close to them in the Champions League. I think it's 8 now away from anyone that could even threaten them from being outside of the top 8. It's a good result. Now, is Arne Slot pleased? He's not. He said there's a lot of things that we can do a lot better. There's a lot of things that they can improve upon, and there's a lot of things that need to be worked upon going into practice in just a couple of hours.
Yeah, but he would be very happy, of course, because of the returning Alisson, who just came back in, slotting as goalkeeper. And one, we saw him, you know, the Alisson that we know and we love.
The Alisson that everyone that is a Liverpool fan enjoys and appreciates, and sometimes don't want to see them or want to see him going through so much hardship, coming back from such a long stint of absence. But he was able to perform. He was one of the men of the match for Liverpool, in my opinion, with the amount of saves and the types of saves that he made, which was one of the criticisms of Arne Slot. He's like, well, Alisson shouldn't be getting that many shots, and it's because of how we were pressing defensively that we allowed Girona to create the opportunities that they did create. Fortunately, for at least from a Liverpool standpoint, it ends up being that they didn't score.
Yeah, correct. And he's been out of action since October because of that hamstring injury. Another player that, you know, we have to single out, this man, it doesn't matter how much he goes up in age. He happens to be the difference maker in a lot of Liverpool matches. And today, again, Mo Salah taking that penalty and, of course, being the difference between Girona and Liverpool.
Not only, I mean, not just any penalty, not just any goal, his 50th in Champions League as well, Mariah. Let's add that to a list of accolades that continue to grow throughout his career. And yeah, I mean, he offers this reliability, because if you look at what he's been able to do throughout his time at Liverpool, he's established that consistency, and why everyone's clamoring, all right, FSG, all right, John Henry, all right, guys, let's start to see what we can do to renew him, to be able to return him at least for one more year or maybe 2, who knows. But Mo Salah this year has been just nothing short of amazing. To me, as of right now, one of the top candidates. If you want to start going into that Ballon d'Or argument, maybe you start looking the way of Mo Salah, just for now.
Okay, and what of Girona? Third consecutive UCL match now without scoring a goal. Juan, what's going wrong with them? And they lost all their money playing the slot machine today.
Well, yeah, they kind of felt like me at the slot machine. And to be honest with you, it's a lack of continuity. There really wasn't any reinforcement that came in. I mean, every time we have this discussion about Girona, the players that they lost and the players that they were able to bring in, are they up to snuff? Are they keeping that level of contribution at where it needs to be, especially knowing the demands of the season this year? In La Liga, the answer is probably. But in terms of Champions League, you know the demands are there. You know that they have to be a step up better, and they haven't so far. And it shows in what's going on, and shows in the most likely of options that ends up being that they end up getting knocked out even in this stage.
Yeah, well, as a Man United fan, I don't think Ricardo wants to talk about Liverpool, so shall we move on to Real Madrid then and talk about the valuable win they got today, because they were tottering just on that 24th place position for qualifying for the next stage, and they got a result with their big names all scoring.
Well, we can talk about that or Jim Radcliffe.
Real Madrid.
Thanks, Real Madrid.
Yeah. Let's talk about Real Madrid.
Yeah. How good were they? How important was the win today for them? Because, well, obviously it was important, but how do you assess how they went about their business?
Good enough. Good enough, and good enough is basically what's going to have to do for Real Madrid right now. We don't know what is going on or what happened with Kylian Mbappe, although he was able to score today. But you saw a Vinicius that when he had to take over, he did. You saw Jude Bellingham that when he had to take over, he did. But then you saw Real Madrid that when they had to defend, they did. And it ends up being exactly that with Madrid. It's just doing enough to get over the finish line, doing enough to be able to get the result. Now, let's keep in mind, at one of the very last plays, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that very last play, the Lookman cross into the middle that Mateo Retegui all by himself ends up hitting over the crossbar, that had 3-3 written all over it. But Madrid, again, dropping sometimes back a little too much, being maybe a little bit too passive against a team like Atalanta. And, well, Madrid does that. And Madrid sometimes gets away with it. And they're a team that, if there is a team in Europe that can get away with it, it's Real Madrid. But as we get along in this tournament, will they have enough to be able to get away with it and going into the future?
Yeah, well, they jumped into 18th position at the moment, which gives them a little bit of comfort with a few more games remaining in this round. But Atalanta, not easy opponents. They're currently top of Serie A, Juan, and provided a pretty stiff challenge for Real Madrid today. Yeah,
I mean, from an Atalanta standpoint, not getting even a draw puts them in a position. Okay, they're not in the top 8. They're in 9th place right now in Champions League. They still can get points and get into that top 8. But it's an opportunity lost at home in Bergamo against a Madrid team that's still kind of struggling, that's still kind of teetering, that if you give them that, even if they're teetering and struggling and hobbling to the finish line, it's still a team with that pedigree that can cause a great deal of damage, and causing a great deal of damage they did.
Yeah, another team causing a great deal of damage, one is Aston Villa. They're up to 3rd in the standings now with today's 3-2 win over RB Leipzig. Of course, no Leon Bailey, the Jamaican, in their matchday squad because of a hamstring injury. Unai Emery saying that he is likely to be back for the English Premier League this weekend. But from your standpoint, Juan, is this Aston Villa team surpassing expectations so far in the Champions League?
In the Champions League, yes. In the Premier League, right now, not so much. But in terms of what they've been able to do in the Champions League and away from home, let's keep in mind, coming into this match, they had lost 4 straight away from home. So that's even more surprising, the result that they're able to get. And they start asserting themselves, knowing, well, okay, fine. If Ollie Watkins isn't working, if Leon Bailey, when he's on the pitch, isn't working, when Unai Emery doesn't have those options going for him, he can always go to his bench and bring in John Duran, and John Duran again ends up being effective for Aston Villa, scoring another golazo from outside of the area. And you do have that. Now, the big question mark for Villa ends up being defensively, which they've been a bit porous, for lack of a better term, over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, McGinn, Duran and Barkley then getting the winner in the 85th minute for the Aston Villa team. A big win as well today for PSG. 3 goals, not conceding either on the road.
Yeah, PSG is an interesting project right now, because I don't know what to think of them at times. And they're a squad that kind of has changed the entire philosophy. Maybe with Luis Enrique, you're going to start seeing a team mature even more as this Champions League goes on. And that could be an interesting proposition going forward. You have all the youngsters that are really falling into a role of responsibility, I guess you could say, because no more is Kylian Mbappe taking over the spotlight over everyone. Everybody's kind of sharing it. Everyone's kind of contributing, and everyone's not only virtues, but also mistakes are in the spotlight a little bit more compared to how it was in previous seasons. So it'll be interesting to see PSG if and when they do advance to the next round.
Yeah, and the 90th minute goal from Mukiele getting the win for Leverkusen over Inter. Leverkusen now up to second position in this league phase of the Champions League, and they too having quite a campaign so far.
When you start comparing it to last year, like, oh, what a letdown. But obviously, I mean, from
Except
what you're
they
saying,
weren't in the Champions League.
Yeah, exactly. They were to the Champions League. But you start looking at how they've been able to establish a system of play or continue that development of a system of play and be able to withstand, be able to neutralize, and of course players like Mukiele being able to stand up and the same ones that did last year in Florian Wirtz, et cetera, have been able to come through and mature and understand what are they going to have to do, not only just playing the Bundesliga, but also playing Champions League like they did this year. And again, Leverkusen, maybe not this year, but if you keep them together one more year, you're going to be talking about them as a potential contender in the Champions League.
Yeah,
outside contender, I should say.
Yeah,
outside contender.
Yeah, fair enough. And one final one from me, Juan. When you look at the top of the Champions League table, this reconstructed format, Liverpool, Leverkusen, Aston Villa, Inter, Brest, Barcelona down in 6th. Bayern Munich, they got a critical win today, but they're all the way down in 8th position as we have a look at the table there. This was critical for Bayern Munich.
Of course it was, and knowing what has happened to them throughout this tournament, it's a team that we're not accustomed to seeing losing at, I guess, the equivalent of this stage of a tournament in Europe. Seeing them lose 2 matches early on, it's not something we're accustomed to seeing. And I guess with this format, we're kind of all in wait and see. We don't know exactly what we're gonna get until maybe next round and the round after that when the mad scramble begins. And to me, it'll be interesting to see where Bayern ends up. I mean, Bayern right now, 12 points in Champions League. The best that they end up doing is 18. They could end up being in the top 8 very easily. So, again, that's basically what everybody's striving for. Maybe that's what that mad dash towards the end is going to be. And winning today helps them in terms of that goal differential as well, which ends up being very important in the long run.
Yeah, Juan, do you prefer this format? I'm not sure if I've heard your thoughts on the new Champions League format.
It's still, there's maybe too much of a margin of error that the teams have. And to me, it ends up being something where, okay, and like today, Real Madrid comes into this round 24th and they jump into 18th. Does it make things interesting? Yes, it does. But at the same time, when you start looking at it, well, when's the excitement gonna come? When is before, okay, you have the interesting ties, you have the historic matchups, you have all that, I give you that. But has it really generated the excitement overall? I would say no.
Yeah. Understand, Juan. Well, maybe we just need to get used to it. Maybe after a couple of seasons.
I agree. I agree.
So let this one play out, and then next season we'll decide if we like it or not. Juan,
Yeah.
as usual, we always enjoy when you stop by on the SportsMax. So I want to thank you so much for your input, and we'll chat again soon.
Thanks a lot. Bye. See you later.
No problem. Bye. Juan Giarango there, our football correspondent. Let's take a look now at the full results from today's action. Okay, so we have that 0-0 draw between Dinamo Zagreb and Celtic. Brest getting that 1-0 win versus PSV. Bayern Munich 5 goals in the win against Shakhtar Donetsk. A 2-1 win for Club Brugge versus Sporting CP. PSG 3 goals versus RB Salzburg. Aston Villa 3-2 win against RB Leipzig. Leverkusen a 1-0 win against Inter. And Real Madrid defeating Atalanta 3 goals to 2. Break time. We're going to take a quick break and come back.